Dinner was still hot when Richard and Ellen Bennett vanished from the small log house on Clearwater Drive in the town of Orofino, Idaho. Population 4,312. On the night of August 18, 1973, moisture from the Clearwater River rose up, coating the pale yellow streetlights in a thin fog. Their neighbor, Marjorie Lang, looked through her kitchen window and saw Ellen clearing the table while Richard sat reading the newspaper next to the small radio, playing the evening program. On the table were 2 plates of unfinished food and a freshly brewed pot of tea. The next morning, the house doors were locked from the inside. The car was still in the garage. The dining table was untouched, but no one answered when Lang knocked. What happened in the hours that followed would haunt Orofino for nearly half a century. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. August 1973, Orofino, a small town along the Clearwater River in northern Idaho, still maintained the slow pace of a working community centered around the paper mill and scattered farms in the valley. Richard Bennett, 49 years old, chief engineer at the potlatch mill, was a calm but strict man, known for his discipline and dedication to his work. His wife, Ellen, 46, had been an elementary school teacher before quitting to care for the family. They had 2 sons, Lyle, 21, studying at college in Lewiston, and Aaron, 18, a senior at Orofino High. The Bennett family lived in a 2-story log house on the edge of town, with a pine forest behind it stretching up the mountainside, where the golden light from the windows rarely went out early. People still saw them as a model of stability and order. A typical middle-class American family in the quiet countryside. On Saturday night, August 18th, the weather was drier and colder than usual, with wind from the valley blowing through the low houses, making the air unusually still. Sometime after dinner, the neighbor across the street heard voices coming from the Bennett house, slightly louder than normal, then suddenly silent. The living room lights stayed on late, the glow filtering through the curtains as on any other night, but no one saw Richard or Ellen leave the house. The next morning, around 8 o'clock, Lyle came downstairs and realized no one was in the kitchen. Coffee hadn't been made, his parents' car was still in the garage, the beds were neatly made, with no sign they had left early. Aaron checked around the yard, called the neighbors, but no one knew anything. The 2 brothers searched every room, then returned to the living room, where the wall clock ticked steadily. Finding no note or message, they began to fear something had happened. By nearly 9 o'clock, Lyle picked up the landline phone and called the town police department to report that his parents had disappeared from the house the night before. The call was transferred to Sheriff James Holler, who was on the morning shift that day. Hearing the trembling voice of the young college student, he instructed them to leave everything in the house untouched and immediately drove over with 2 deputies to 416 Clearwater Drive. The dirt road leading to the Bennett house was still covered in mist, flanked by thick pine forest, the early morning light dim. When the patrol car stopped at the gate, Lyle and Aaron were waiting on the porch. Both wore thin sweaters, looking tense but not panicked. Holler told them to stay in the yard, then entered the house with his deputies. The front door was locked from the inside, the key on the table by the entrance. He put on gloves to open it, observing each room in turn. The living room was tidy, the sofa and coffee table undisturbed, the TV off, curtains half drawn. In the kitchen, the dining table had 2 unwashed plates, utensils scattered, the food cold, and a glass of milk half full. No signs of rummaging or struggle. The wall clock showed 9:27, everything as if frozen from the night before. Holler noted in his notebook, doors and interior intact. No signs of altercation or forced entry. He ordered photos of the entire area, from the front door to the hallway. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Richard and Ellen's bed was made, blankets smooth, closet full, no missing luggage or coats. Ellen's dressing table still had her brush, perfume and wristwatch next to the bedside lamp. Aaron's room was messy, books scattered on the desk, while Lyle's was neat, with a half-open suitcase containing a few folded clothes. In the basement, the air was damp and cold, smelling of old wood and heating oil. Tool shelves were neatly arranged. A few potted plants wilted near the small window. Haller bent down to examine the cement floor, spotting a few dried mud streaks running from the stairs to the back door. He marked them, took photos, and noted faint shoe prints, likely from someone in the house. In the backyard, the grass was still wet with dew, the wooden fence closed, the gate unlocked. Near the back porch on the dirt, there was a shallow, large shoe print pointing toward the house. Haller measured it, recorded it, but couldn't conclude yet. After nearly 2 hours of inspection, the police team completed the scene survey. No blood, no missing items, no signs of break-in. Haller returned to the living room and briefly questioned the two sons about the last time they saw their parents. Lyle said they mentioned going out to meet friends, but didn't say where, while Aaron stated he heard the door close, but didn't know who left. Both denied hearing any unusual noises. Haller summarized in the report: no direct witnesses, no confirmed departure time. As he left the house, he placed a small caution tape across the gate and ordered the area temporarily sealed. Back at the station, Haller opened a new file, numbered 73MP027, classifying the case as missing persons of unknown cause. The initial report described 2 adults vanished from residence, no signs of struggle, no evidence of crime. Cause undetermined. On that quiet Sunday morning, the town of Orofino went on as usual, except for one house at the end of the dirt road, locked tight, silent, and from that moment, the name Bennett began to be entered into the list of unsolved mysteries in Clearwater County. In the 2 days following the file's opening, Sheriff Haller began the preliminary investigation phase. He divided the deputies to interview residents around Clearwater Drive. Most neighbors described the Bennett family as private, proper, with little interaction but respected. The couple often attended Sunday service together. Richard drove to the potlatch paper mill every morning, and Ellen tended the garden and participated in the town's women's group. No one had ever heard them mention leaving or any plans for a long trip. The next-door neighbor, Alice Morton, stated that on Saturday night, she heard loud voices from the Bennett house, then silence. She didn't see their car leave the garage or hear the engine. When Haller asked more, she confirmed the house lights stayed on late and went out around midnight. 2 houses down, George Packer, a plumber, said he had run into Richard at the hardware store that afternoon. The man seemed normal, just mentioning he was fixing the basement due to dampness. No one else in the neighborhood reported anything unusual. The police continued working with Richard's colleagues at the mill. Shift supervisor Dean Collins confirmed Richard had worked normally through the week, with no mention of taking leave or traveling. He left no paperwork requesting a work pause, and his August paycheck was still unclaimed. Personnel records showed no resignation or transfer request. A younger co-worker said Richard had seemed tired and irritable in recent weeks, but showed no signs of instability. For Ellen, police asked at the Lutheran Church Women's Group. She was seen as gentle, quiet, attending meetings every Thursday. No one recalled her mentioning travel or marital issues. A former neighbor from her teaching days said she had wanted to return to the profession, but hadn't, because Richard wanted her home with the kids. Other acquaintances in town all affirmed this was a stable family. No debts, no involvement in conflicts or disputes with anyone. Police continued checking the local bank. Records showed Richard's account intact, except for a $2,000 withdrawal on August 16. No transactions after that. Credit card unused, utility bills on auto pay. Haller sent requests to check nearby gas stations, hotels and post offices to verify if they had left the county, but got no results. At the family doctor's office, medical records showed no serious chronic conditions. Ellen had been treated for mild arthritis. Richard was healthy. No new prescriptions or missed appointments. Police also considered the possibility they left for personal reasons. Further interviews with old classmates, relatives in other states, and the caretaker of the cemetery where Richard's parents were buried yielded no contact or letters from them. When postal data was checked, there were no packages or change of address forms in the Bennett name. Haller noted in the report, No financial, medical, or mail activity after August 18. No evidence the couple left intentionally. On the afternoon of the third day since taking the case, he met with the investigation team to compile results. The deputies presented the list of interviewed witnesses, a map of the area around the house, and an estimated timeline of the night of the incident. No one saw them leave the house. No one heard the car start. Doors locked from inside, key by the front door, car in the garage. All signs suggested Richard and Ellen vanished in a short window during the night, leaving no clues. Haller recorded a temporary conclusion in the file on August 22. No evidence the two victims left the residence by their own vehicle or had plans to travel far. No direct witnesses, possibility of voluntary departure ruled out. As the report was filed, the Bennett disappearance shifted from a civil incident to an official investigation into potential criminal activity. After completing the interview phase and reviewing personal records, Sheriff Haller decided to expand the scope of the field search around the Bennett house. On August 23, a mixed team of 12 police officers, 5 volunteers from the local rescue team, and 2 tracking dogs was mobilized. The area was divided into 3 main directions: the pine forest to the north, the dirt road connecting to the highway, and the Clearwater River slope running along the back of the town. A detailed map prepared by Deputy Langdon marked each strip of forest, trail, and point accessible by pickup truck. The search began at 7 in the morning, clear skies, high humidity, the ground still wet with dew. In the first direction, the group walked from the Bennett house into the pine forest about 100 meters away. Fallen trees and layers of decayed leaves made movement difficult. After 2 hours of sweeping, they found a few shallow shoe prints on the damp soil. The prints were large, rubber sole type, appearing newer than the surrounding leaf litter. Haller measured them, noting a length of about 12 inches, matching average men's shoe size, and took photos. The tracks were short, not forming a clear path, ending in a drier area near a large pine tree. He marked it with a wooden stake and ordered the scene preserved for later comparison. The second group followed the dirt road to the highway. One side had a low wooden fence, the other wild grass mixed with rocks. They discovered a cream-colored handkerchief with small embroidered flowers, caught on a bush about 40 meters from the Bennett fence. The rescue team leader collected it with gloves and placed it in an evidence bag. Upon return, the two sons confirmed the pattern resembled the type their mother often used, but they weren't sure it was hers. Haller noted, "Item possibly related to female victim, requires further verification." In this area, besides the handkerchief, no other evidence was found. The third direction was deployed along the Clearwater River, where the terrain was steep and overgrown. 2 locals who fished in the nearby river section said they saw no unusual lights or vehicles the night of the Bennett's disappearance. While scanning the water's edge, the search team found a disturbed mud streak, possibly from an animal or person stepping. The tracking dogs sniffed and followed it about 50 meters before turning back, showing no further reaction. In the afternoon, temperatures rose, making the search harder, forcing the team to narrow the scope. All groups gathered at the starting point to report. Summary of results: 3 faint shoe prints in the forest, 1 handkerchief, no signs of vehicle movement or other physical traces. The next day, Haller deployed a supplemental search with metal detectors around the backyard and basement area to determine if any metal objects were buried. Results showed only rusty nails and old tools. Outside, they expanded another 500 meters westward, passing a path to the forest edge and open land. By noon, the rescue team found a large indentation in the dry grass, with small tire marks like from a handcart, but the formation time couldn't be determined. No foreign objects or digging signs. The day's summary report stated, "No bodies found, no vehicle departure discovered. Collected shoe prints and handkerchief insufficient to conclude relation to disappearance." In the end-of-day meeting at headquarters, Haller reviewed the area map and scene photos. He marked suspicious points in red pen, but all were scattered clues leading nowhere specific. He ordered evidence storage and continued supplemental searches within a 2-mile radius of the house, while sending the handkerchief to the Lewiston lab for fiber analysis. In his work log, Haller wrote, "Bennett case, Day 5. Full search of forest, river, and access roads completed. Results: no victims or vehicles found. Signs of crime undetermined. Maintain open search status." As night fell, the town returned to its familiar quiet. The Bennett house remained sealed, porch lights off. Only the yellow tape reflecting patrol car headlights as they passed. A reminder that the search still had no answers. When the search yielded no results, Sheriff Haller shifted focus to analyzing the victim's financial and behavioral factors prior to disappearance. On August 26, he received a report from Idaho First Bank on Richard Bennett's account. Records showed 3 days before vanishing, he withdrew $2,000 in cash at the Lewiston branch. The large sum for the time caught Haller's attention, as the Bennetts typically paid via check or credit card. Besides this withdrawal, no transactions after August 16, no deposits, no further withdrawals, no store purchases. Utility and insurance bills remained on auto-pay. This ruled out them taking money to start a new life elsewhere. Police contacted gas stations, post offices, and hotels within a 100-mile radius to trace them, but no one recognized the couple or their car. Richard and Ellen's passports were found in the desk drawer, no signs of use. In the closet, all luggage remained, even the old travel suitcase. Lyle confirmed his parents never mentioned traveling, let alone visiting relatives out of state. The county report stated, "No evidence supporting voluntary departure hypothesis." However, the cash withdrawal remained unexplained. Haller speculated Richard might have intended to pay someone or buy home repair materials, as he told a colleague. A hardware store employee confirmed Bennett bought paint and floor adhesive days earlier, totaling about $50, paid in cash, no other receipts. The remaining large sums whereabouts unknown. The planned elopement theory was discussed but quickly refuted. Deputy Langdon pointed out that, if they truly left, they would have taken ID, the car, and luggage. No signs of preparation. Everything in the house intact, only the sudden absence of 2 people. Haller noted in his book, "Elopement Possibility, Low." He shifted to psychological and family relationship analysis. Witness reports from the first week showed Richard was strict, even harsh with his younger son. A teacher at Aaron's high school said the boy was once punished by his father for poor grades, missing school for days. Lyle, the older brother, was seen as a model student, but quiet, and avoided mentioning his father. Some church group members said the family hadn't attended service together recently, possibly due to internal conflict. Haller ordered behavioral profiles for each member to assess family conflict potential. Note in the record, family has strict discipline structure, tense father-son relations. Reviewing statements, he noticed the brothers always emphasized being home that night, hearing no unusual sounds, but no proof they were together. Aaron said he was in his room reading. Lyle said he went to bed early, while neighbors heard arguing. These inconsistencies made the psychological profile more critical in reconstructing the night. Haller noted in the Clearwater County summary, no basis for voluntary departure hypothesis. Financial, medical, personal records, all stable. No debts or economic pressure. Consider motives related to family relations. He asked Deputy Langdon to create a timeline comparison of each member's activities on August 18, cross-referencing with witnesses, noting house lights on late. By week's end, nearly 10 days after the report, Haller's preliminary conclusion to the state office stated, "Voluntary departure hypothesis ruled out. Disappearance shows no preparation or planning. Psychological profile indicates internal family tension, especially between father and younger son. Investigation shifts to examining intra-family relationships." With that conclusion, the official investigation expanded into behavioral aspects, marking a shift from pure searching to motive analysis and potential criminality. After the preliminary report identified family relationship conflicts, Sheriff Haller decided to conduct separate interrogations of Richard and Ellen Bennett's 2 sons to clarify gaps in their statements. On August 28, The first interview was held at the Orofino police headquarters, in a small second-floor office. The first called was Lyle, the eldest son. He arrived on time, wearing a gray wool jacket, neat and calm. Haller started with questions about the evening schedule on the 18th. Lyle said after dinner, he went upstairs to read materials for the fall semester, then slept around 10:30. When asked if he heard noises or anyone leaving, he replied briefly, "Nothing unusual. I just remember the living room light was on." Haller noted Lyle's demeanor, calm, even voice, no anxiety. When asked why he didn't call police that night, Lyle explained he thought his parents were visiting friends, only realizing something was wrong the next morning when the car was still in the garage. The interview lasted over an hour, yielding no new details. Lyle was cooperative, but answers felt distant, as if recounting someone else's event. That afternoon, Aaron was called in. He looked tired, wearing an old shirt, dark circles under his eyes. When Haller asked about that evening, Aaron said after dinner, his parents watched TV, while he was upstairs doing homework. Around after 10, he heard footsteps down the stairs, then the door closing softly. Haller recorded the estimated time, and compared with Lyle's statement, the timelines didn't match. Lyle claimed he slept before his parents left, while Aaron clearly remembered hearing the door later. Haller asked if he saw anyone leave. Aaron shook his head, saying he didn't want to draw attention, so stayed upstairs. He admitted hearing loud voices, like arguing, but didn't catch the content. When asked why he didn't mention this initially, Aaron said he wasn't sure and didn't want to misinterpret. Haller sensed anxiety in the boy, but different from Lyle's control. Both brothers described that dinner but differed on the dish and end time. Lyle said Ellen cooked stew. Aaron insisted roast chicken. Discrepancies in small details caught Haller's attention, suggesting they were describing different scenes. He noted in the record, statements inconsistent, especially regarding time and behavior between 9 and 11 p.m. In the next day's internal meeting, Haller presented to deputies, statements don't match, but no physical evidence to support suspicion. The only traces, handkerchief and faint prints, lacked legal value. Some younger officers suggested excavating the basement to rule out in-house crime. But Haller hesitated without grounds for a supplemental warrant. He stressed the case remained a missing persons matter, and caution was needed to avoid harming the family's reputation. In following days, Haller called Lyle and Aaron again to verify details. Lyle stuck to his story, saying parents had no serious conflicts, only occasional arguments about Aaron's college choice. Aaron said the house atmosphere was tense lately. Father often blamed mother for spending and scolded the younger son for poor grades. The differing descriptions added more contradictions. Deputy Langdon noted internally, Lyle shows unnatural calm for someone who lost both parents. Aaron seems under pressure and evasive when mentioning father. After a week, Haller reviewed all statements and summarized in the September 2nd report. He concluded, 2 primary witnesses provide conflicting, inconsistent information on time, behavior, and sounds heard the night of disappearance. No physical evidence supports crime hypothesis, thus cannot expand investigation. In the final note, he added, continue monitoring the 2 sons' behavior, unusually calm statements given circumstances. As the report was signed and filed, the Bennett case remained stagnant. Police had raised many questions, but answers circled, leaving a silent gap between what the brothers said and what no one could prove. 3 days after completing the statement report, Sheriff Haller decided to return to the Bennett house for another detailed inspection. He believed the initial team might have missed small details that, as hypotheses were ruled out, could now become key clues. On September 5th, he returned with deputies Langdon and Pierce to the house sealed for nearly 3 weeks. The house sat quietly amid the pine strip, yellow caution tape faded from sun. Upon opening the door, the smell of damp wood and old food lingered. They started on the ground floor, remeasuring distances from the back door to the basement stairs, noting positions of the dining table, chairs, kitchen items, everything as before, undisturbed. Haller noticed the floor near the back door, where light slanted down, the wood color lighter than elsewhere. He shone a flashlight closely, seeing fresh paint, brush strokes still visible. Langdon tapped it, the sound different. Haller marked the area in his notebook and ordered photos. They moved upstairs, checking each room. Beds still made, closets unchanged. Nothing taken. Lyle and Aaron's rooms thoroughly checked. Nothing suspicious beyond old newspapers and textbooks. Returning downstairs, Haller ordered another basement check. The wooden door to the basement opened. Cold air rising with musty smell under dim light. The concrete floor covered in fine dust. Langdon shone light along walls, where garden tools, shovels, hammers, drill hung, all clean, recently arranged. Near the east wall corner, they noticed a section floored with wood planks instead of concrete like the rest. Joints clear, wood light-colored, new glue smell lingering. Haller noted, new flooring section, estimated less than 3 months old. He asked the deputies if they saw this initially. Both said yes, but thought normal repair with no reason to suspect. Haller ordered measurements of the refloored area, about 2 meters long, over 1.5 meters wide. No cracks or sinking. He tapped the edge with a knife. Solid sound, not hollow. No new mud or sand. Langdon checked surroundings, finding an empty paint bucket, label from the local hardware store, matching what Richard bought before disappearing. They recorded the product number and added to evidence. Continuing the survey, Haller checked plumbing, heater, storage shelves. Thick dust on everything, no signs of heavy dragging. He bent down, flashlight close to the floor, searching for blood or bullet marks, but found only small black spots, likely mold. Pierce took samples, but on-site quick test negative for blood protein. For certainty, they took more dust samples from the planks and sent to Lewiston Lab, though Haller knew results were unlikely reliable under conditions. After nearly 2 hours, the inspection ended without new findings classifiable as criminal evidence. In a brief on-site meeting, Langdon suggested a warrant to excavate the new floor to rule out all possibilities. Haller considered, but per regulations, it required clearer grounds than suspicion. He looked around the dark basement, light from the small window on floating dust, then shook his head. No legal reason yet. The team resealed the basement, placed a "Do Not Disturb" sign, and left in the late afternoon. Back at headquarters, Haller filed a second report, detailing findings. Basement floor area shows recent repair signs. No blood, bullet marks, or criminal evidence found. Insufficient grounds for excavation warrant. Case maintained in lack of criminal evidence status. The report was sent to Clearwater County office with attached images. As Haller signed, he realized the Bennett file was slowing. All signs stopped at suspicion without confirmation. The house returned to sealed status, only chalk marks on the floor and faint new glue smell remaining. Small details no one then expected would later become pivotal in this case. After the inspection of the Bennett house yielded no specific results, Sheriff Haller was forced to expand the search scope beyond the residential area. On September 8, he sent a request for assistance to the Clearwater County Rescue Force and the Idaho State Police Office to plan a comprehensive sweep of 2 key areas, the Clearwater River bank and the Priest Lake region to the north, where the terrain was complex but often used by locals as a stopover for outings. The reason for choosing these 2 locations was that from the Bennett house, there were 2 routes leading to Highway 11, then branching north along the river and connecting to the lake area. The hypothesis put forward, if the 2 victims had an accident or left the house in an unexpected situation, they likely traveled this route. On the morning of September 10th, a search team of 18 people, 4 pickup trucks, 2 motorboats, and a tracking dog unit set out from Orofino, following the Clearwater River bank. The water flowed swiftly, thick fog covered the area, movement had to proceed slowly. Teams were divided into small groups to sweep both banks, using long poles to probe shallow water areas while checking each eroding soil section. On the first day, they found several scattered items, a pair of men's leather gloves drifting to the shore, an empty coffee can, and a dark blue fabric scrap caught in bushes. All three items were collected and transferred to headquarters. However, upon comparison, the gloves did not match Richard's size, the fabric did not match house clothing, and the coffee can was a common type. No evidence proved relation to the Bennett case. The next day, the second team headed to Priest Lake. The terrain here was rugged, surrounded by pine forest and rocky slopes. Vehicle access reached only part way, then required hiking trails. They set up a temporary station and began sweeping lakeside sand areas where summer camping was common. In a rock crevice near the water's edge, a volunteer found a fabric scrap wrapped around a small button with white patterns. Haller ordered it collected and carefully sealed. Upon return to Orofino, Ellen Bennett's sister from Spokane was invited to identify it. She said the button looked like the type her sister used, but couldn't confirm due to its common style. The fabric sample was sent to the Boise lab for fiber testing, but due to lack of modern analysis tools, results only identified common cotton-nylon blend, untraceable origin. After 7 days of searching, over 12 miles along the river and lake were swept, but no further human traces or vehicles found. Tracking dogs detected no unusual scents, and rescue teams concluded no accident signs in the surveyed range. Haller's September 17 report stated, "No bodies, no burn marks, no abandoned vehicles, collected items insufficient for relation confirmation." At the same time, county support funding began to limit. The search lasting over 3 weeks forced gradual withdrawal of forces. Police were left with the local team maintaining periodic checks in a small radius. Haller, in an internal meeting, admitted the Bennett case was reaching a deadlock. All directions voluntary departure, accident, abduction, lacked clear evidence. The complete absence of bodies or witnesses prevented classifying it as criminal, but insufficient grounds to close as civil missing persons. He ordered deputies to store all evidence in the warehouse, create temporary archive files, and await state office directives. On September 22, the initial phase summary report was sent to the Idaho State Police Office. It stated, after expanding search to Clearwater River and Priest Lake areas, no further missing persons, traces, or vehicles found. Collected evidence insufficient for verification. Due to lack of biological identification technology and physical evidence, investigation temporarily suspended. That same day, Haller signed the decision to halt field searches, shifting the file to temporarily closed status with the note to reopen upon new information. The Bennett house remained sealed, keys handed to the county office. A short notice in the Orofino Tribune late September read only a few lines. After over a month of investigation, the disappearance of Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Ellen Bennett shows no progress. Police say no possibilities are ruled out, but currently no specific evidence. For the small town's residents, the story gradually faded after long, disappointing searches. For Haller alone, in his late-month duty log, he wrote a brief line, "Bennett case. 40 days. No bodies, no evidence. Temporarily closed." With that entry, the initial investigation phase officially ended, leaving an unresolved gap in Clearwater County's files. 2 years after the search ended, the Bennett disappearance gradually became a dormant file in the Orofino Police Department's storage cabinet. Initial reports, scene records, and witness statements were all numbered, clipped in thick brown paper folders. Sheriff James Haller, who once directly managed the entire investigation, had now shifted to administrative work. Many rescue team members, when asked again, barely remembered the exact stop date, only recalling a long, silent autumn. By March 1975, the Clearwater County Office reviewed open files past deadline, including Bennett. The evaluation report stated, "No investigation progress in 18 months, no bodies found, no determined crime signs." Per regulations, missing persons cases over 2 years without criminal evidence are reclassified as unresolved. On March 14, 1975, file number 73MP027 was officially relabeled Cold Case. Unresolved missing persons. The status change order was signed by Lieutenant David Carson, confirming the case no longer under active investigation. Related evidence, including the handkerchief found near the fence, fabric scrap from Priest Lake, river drifting gloves, and basement dust samples, was haphazardly sealed in old plastic bags and sent to the state police storage in Lewiston. The evidence warehouse then was a row of 1940s brick buildings, damp and cramped, staffed by 2 personnel. Sealing used tape and handwritten paper labels, no ID codes or specialized locks. Upon handover, evidence bags were marked in blue ink, Case Bennett 1973. MISC items. Per warehouse log, no periodic checks, evidence stacked with hundreds of other cases, from theft to accidents. After handover completion, the Bennett file was placed in Cabinet 24, third shelf from the bottom. In Orofino, the Bennett family home remained vacant, later foreclosed by the bank, due to no heirs processing claims. Neighborhood residents gradually mentioned the case less. Old Orofino Tribune articles were archived, leaving only brief notes in short news sections. For police, Clearwater County's annual Unsolved Cases summary repeated a cold line about Bennett. No determined perpetrator, no bodies found, no new evidence, no new witnesses. The case officially sank into the dense 1970s files, when DNA identification or trace analysis didn't exist. In 1976, Sheriff Haller retired, leaving his old desk and drawer of personal notes. Among them, a small notebook was found, last page with his unfinished line. No bodies, no crime, but feeling it's not over. The notebook was filed with the official case and quickly forgotten. When new personnel took over, Bennett was mentioned only as a long-term missing persons case, one of hundreds unsolved in Clearwater County history. By late 1975, when the internal cold case list was released, Bennett was position 112, between 2 traffic accidents and an unexplained house fire. Lieutenant Carson's summary report noted briefly: no determined perpetrator, no bodies found. No financial activity or movement since August 18, 1973. No suspects. Evidence stored in Lewiston. File closed. That short entry became the final conclusion for the initial investigation phase, and ending without answers, marking when Bennett was officially shelved among northern Idaho's forgotten mysteries. 45 years after the Bennett file was classified as a cold case, the old log house at the end of Clearwater Drive had changed hands many times. By early 2018, it belonged to a young couple newly moved from Lewiston, named Daniel and Marcia Rhodes. The house was run down, basement floor damp and cracked, plumbing rotted, so they hired a local crew for full foundation repairs. On March 14, 2018, when Orofino construction workers began cutting the old concrete slab to replace pipes, the cutter suddenly hit a strange hard object. A shrill metal sound rang out. The blade snapped in half. Worker Kyle Edwards bent to check, finding the soil beneath unusually dark, as if dug and compacted years ago. Shoveling thin soil, he exposed a greenish-gray rusted metal piece, short cylinder with twisted edges. Thinking old water pipe, he dug deeper, but minutes later, the shovel hit something brittle and light. Soil collapsed, revealing yellowish-brown bone fragments mixed with dust and rotted wood. Recognizing the anomaly, Edwards stopped work immediately, called the homeowners down. Daniel Rhodes inspected and reported to town police. 15 minutes later, the Clearwater County Sheriff's response team arrived, cordoning the basement and removing all workers. Acting Sheriff Connie Larson ordered digital filming of the scene and contacted the Lewiston County Forensic Office. As more soil was removed, forensic staff found not one but multiple intertwined bone sections, some fragmented. Excavation paused until specialists arrived. The next day, a Boise forensic team was dispatched. They divided the basement into small grid squares for manual excavation. In the morning alone, nearly 100 large and small bone fragments were collected, including skull, pelvis, and ribs, plus a broken tube metal piece identified as an old shotgun barrel. A 1971 dated coin and dark fabric scrap were also found in the same soil layer. Samples were placed in specialized boxes numbered by position. By day's end, preliminary on-site expert results confirmed at least 2 human skeletons, 1 male, 1 female, buried less than half a meter deep, directly under the refloored section. News spread fast across Orofino. For town residents, the Bennett name had faded over decades. But when police barriers and forensic vans filled the small road, old memories resurfaced. The next morning's Lewiston Morning Tribune headline read briefly, "Human bones discovered in home once owned by 1973 missing family." The Clearwater County Sheriff's internal March 15 report confirmed the incident matched Cold Case File 73 MP027. The entire house was sealed, new owners temporarily relocated with assistance. The investigation team coordinated with the Boise Forensic Institute to collect all soil, wood, and metal samples for testing. The rusted barrel fragment was 32 centimeters long, with part of the bolt mechanism. Exterior retained faint black paint, common Winchester production from early 1970s. Each bone was numbered, cleaned with neutral solution, then packed and shipped to Boise that day. Transport used specialized vehicles with escorts. Larson also contacted the state police office for DNA identification expertise, as genetic analysis technology could now handle old samples. On March 20th, the Boise Forensic Lab confirmed receipt of all samples. Initial report sent to Orofino after 4 days stated, bones from the same burial pit, with long-term soil adhesion and heavy compression. Some fragments showed characteristic cracks from high-impact trauma before death. The broken barrel, cleaned, revealed burn marks and oxidation consistent with firing. However, bullet type and shot angle undetermined, yet forensic experts recommended nuclear and mitochondrial DNA extraction from well-preserved femur and teeth samples for victim identification. Meanwhile, Clearwater County issued a brief press release on March 14, 2018. During private home repairs at Clearwater Drive, human bone fragments were discovered. Preliminary assessment suggests these may be remains of 2 persons missing since 1973. Clearwater County Sheriff's Office is coordinating with Idaho State Forensic Lab for identification. This event reignited the Bennett case after nearly half a century. Old documents, from Sheriff Haller's scene reports to yellowed notes, were transferred from Lewiston storage to Boise for investigation. For the first time in 45 years, File 73 MP027 was reactivated in the state database with new status. Reopened investigation. Human remains discovered. In the update memo to state level, Clearwater noted 2 human skeletons found under basement floor at former Richard and Ellen Bennett residence, 1 shotgun barrel fragment, and other metal items also collected, all sent to Boise Forensic Institute for DNA analysis and cause of death determination. In the temporary conclusion section, Larson added a short note, high likelihood this answers Orofino's longest unsolved disappearance. With that discovery, one of Idaho's quiet town's longest mysteries began reopening, from the very place it had been buried in silence for nearly half a century. On March 26, 2018, after the preliminary Boise forensic report confirmed 2 human skeletons in the former Bennett family home, the Idaho State Police Office officially re-established a special investigation team. Assigned to lead was Detective Sarah Miller, an experienced specialist in backlog homicide cases, having handled many cold cases in the Northwest. Miller, then 45, had worked 10 years in the state violent crimes unit before transferring to special investigations. She was known for meticulous methods, strict procedures, and cross-referencing old files with new technology. In the first Boise meeting, she was tasked with reviewing all Bennett-related documents, retrieving original evidence, and assessing integrity before retesting. On March 28, Miller and 2 assistants traveled to the Lewiston Police Department storage, where case evidence was sent in 1975. The storage was in old industrial brick buildings, no temperature or humidity control. In the narrow room, hundreds of file boxes stacked, many cardboard torn, seals faded. Storage staff checked old logs to find the Case Bennett, 1973 box. Upon opening, Miller saw evidence bags mixed. One nylon bag with a discolored handkerchief, another with fabric scrap, and a soil sample bag with peeling seal, no signature. No detailed evidence inventory, only a few handwritten lines by Lieutenant Carson, who signed the transfer order. Some small items, like leather gloves and rusty nails, were missing. She noted on site, storage substandard, improper sealing, some evidence unverifiable origin. Miller repackaged everything in sealed plastic containers, applied new digital ID labels, and transferred to Boise. That day, she requested all original Orofino documents, paper files kept over 40 years. Upon receipt, the nearly 10-centimeter thick file was mostly damaged. Yellowed paper, blurred ink, many torn pages. The 1973 scene report lacked detailed photos, only pencil sketches of dining table and stairs positions. Interrogation transcripts of the two sons' missing middle pages, apparently misfiled with another case. Sheriff Haller's report had handwritten notes with mismatched timelines, complicating event sequence. Cross-referencing initial evidence list with Lewiston warehouse log, Miller found at least 3 mismatches, including basement dust sample and scene photo. Some blurry prints showed basement concrete floor color differences, but no exact position notes. Lack of photo data and documentation made Miller realize severe limitations in 1970s procedures. In her internal note, she wrote, "Bennett case clearly shows systemic 1970s investigation shortcomings. No evidence storage standards, no cross-check procedures, no independent testing records." On April 2nd, at Boise headquarters, she held a meeting with new forensic specialists, presenting requests to re-examine all original evidence with modern technology. Miller's goal was not only identifying the two skeletons, but reconstructing the scene in ways impossible in 1973. She proposed micro-CT scanning for bone trauma structure analysis, ballistic data comparison, and nuclear mitochondrial DNA extraction from well-preserved samples. The suspected barrel fragment was assigned to the weapons lab for burn marks, rifling, and match potential with 1970s Idaho common Winchester ammo. During preparation, Miller contacted the State Central Archive for unsolved missing persons database access for genetic comparison if needed. She requested a new digital file with ID, Case 73 MP027R, for reopened. Her first report sent April 5 stated, "Orofino discovery likely matches 1973 Richard and Ellen Bennett disappearance. Old file has many procedural errors and missing evidence data. Recommend full retesting with modern DNA and ballistic analysis to confirm identity and cause of death." In the final comments, Miller added, "Over 45 years, Bennett exemplifies pre-modern criminal investigation limits. Current task is restoring truth from the scantest remains." With that conclusion, full original evidence re-verification officially began, marking a new investigation phase for a case thought forever buried in Idaho's cold storage. After Detective Sarah Miller completed retrieving and reclassifying the original evidence, all samples were transferred to the Boise Forensic Lab to begin the modern technical examination phase. On April 9, 2018, the expert team led by Dr. Harold Raines, head of forensic chemistry, officially received file Case 73 MP027R. Among the evidence batch, the most important samples were 2 wood planks from the basement floor, marked in old records as repaired area. Upon unsealing, the planks had turned gray, with dried glue along edges, but the inner core remained structurally intact. Raines decided to slice thin sections using an electron microscope for trace analysis. After a few hours, he discovered fine black particles mixed in the cellulose fibers on the surface. Grease reaction testing revealed nitrate compounds, characteristic signs of combustion from gunfire. Subsequent atomic absorption spectroscopy confirmed lead, antimony, and barium, three metals typical of gunpowder residue. The report stated, basement wood samples contain nitrate traces and heavy metals consistent with lead bullet discharge byproducts. High likelihood, this area experienced close-range gunfire. This was the first evidence showing the Bennett house was not just a disappearance scene, but possibly a homicide site. Miller personally went to Boise to monitor analysis, requesting expanded testing for shot direction. Rain's team measured nitrate residue density distribution, determining concentration skewed left on the plank. Simulation results showed the bullet fired from 2.4 to 2.8 meters at a 15-degree downward angle, consistent with a shooter standing if victims were seated or kneeling. Miller noted in the record, shot direction from staircase area down to basement center. Coordinates match remains excavation site. Concurrently, the weapons examination unit inspected the metal fragment recovered during excavation. Beneath the greenish-gray rust, rifling grooves inside the tube remained clear. The sample was chemically cleaned to reveal faint markings, Winchester 12GA, full choke, identifying it as the barrel of a Winchester Model 1200 shotgun, common in the western U.S. in the early 1970s. Carbon steel construction and broken threading at the rear indicated the barrel was forcibly separated from the receiver, possibly during concealment. The weapons lab cross-referenced Winchester catalogs, determining a 28-inch barrel for 12-gauge lead shot, high destructive power at short range. Combining ballistic data with wood chemical analysis, the unit concluded, gunpowder residue on floor samples matches combustion compounds of 12-gauge ammunition produced 1970-1975. This ammunition compatible with Winchester Model 1200 barrel found at scene. For further verification, Raines conducted digital shot trajectory reconstruction. Using basement dimensions from archived photos and burial pit location, the team simulated the bullet path from an assumed shooter near the staircase base. The trajectory slanted downward, crossing the central floor area with highest nitrate density, stopping at coordinates matching the body burial. Simulation results indicated firing under 3 meters, impact force sufficient to penetrate soft tissue and embed in the rear wall. Re-examining wood fragments from the east wall, the team found additional tiny spherical metal particles, deformed lead shot, further confirming on-site gunfire. The lead and nitrate distribution map showed an affected area about 1 square meter, matching the later refloored section. When Raines presented results, Miller silently took notes. These data showed perfect alignment between burial location and bullet impact zone. In the April 17 memo to the Idaho State Office, she wrote, basement evidence analysis from Bennett House shows 12-gauge gunfire occurred. Barrel fragment at scene belongs to Winchester Model 1200, contemporaneous with Richard and Ellen Bennett disappearance. Shot direction and nitrate residue match body burial area. That same day, the forensic lab continued analyzing bone samples. Under microscope, male skeleton ribs showed arc-shaped cracks with blackened edges, characteristic of close-range explosive injury. A female skull fragment had a fracture line from nape to crown, matching simulated trajectory angle. Separate histology report confirmed cracks formed while bodies were alive, not post-burial. All results reinforced the determination both victims shot dead in the basement with a Winchester shotgun, then buried under the floor. On April 19, Raines sent a 15-page comprehensive examination summary to the investigation team. The conclusion boldly stated, physical and ballistic evidence consistent with a firearm discharge at close range within the basement area. Probable cause of death, gunshot wounds. Miller read each page carefully, folded it, and signed confirmation. After 45 years, the Bennett file had its first clear physical evidence, traces of a shot the previous investigation generation overlooked. These data not only explained the 1973 mysterious disappearance, but laid the foundation for the next phase, identifying the shooter, starting from evidence in the old basement wood of the small Orofino house. With evidence analysis confirming basement gunfire, Detective Sarah Miller's next step was identifying the two skeletons. The Boise Forensic Lab began DNA extraction from femurs and teeth, using mitochondrial sequence reconstruction, specialized for decades decomposed samples. Specialists worked continuously in sterile conditions, each sample treated with deproteinizing solution, then high-speed centrifuge to isolate usable DNA. Due to bone mineralization, extraction took nearly 2 weeks. On May 2, 2018, Dr. Raines sent preliminary results to the team. Both bone samples yielded nuclear DNA signals, pure enough for identification. Results showed the skeletons were husband-wife related, not close same-gender relatives. Male DNA matched biological sex from pelvis structure, female had distinct genome, fully aligning with old file predictions. Raines noted, 2 bone samples from same decomposition period, buried same location. Biological age structures match Richard and Ellen Bennett ages at 1973 disappearance. However, absolute identity confirmation required reference samples. With both victims' parents deceased, Miller decided to locate living relatives. She contacted Idaho Civil Records and the National Genealogy DNA System, where voluntary genetic samples are stored for missing persons identification. On May 8, EED Match Database returned a partial match between female DNA and a California user, Rebecca Hale in Fresno. 18-segment similarity indicated high likelihood Rebecca was Ellen's niece. Miller called to verify. Rebecca confirmed her mother was Ellen Bennett's sister and agreed to provide a DNA sample. The test kit was expedited to Boise that day. 1 week later, comparison showed 99.98% mitochondrial match, legally sufficient to identify the female remains as Ellen Bennett, born 1927 in Spokane. For the male sample, identification was harder without close relatives. Miller expanded genealogy search through public genetic files. On May 18, the system detected a distant connection, a Bennett in Sacramento with 15-segment overlap. After exchanges, he was identified as Richard's cousin, Thomas Bennett Jr., now over 70. Thomas cooperated, sending a saliva sample via civil test kit. Results confirmed direct paternal lineage relation, 99.94% similarity. Boise Forensic Lab immediately issued official conclusion, male remains Richard Bennett, female remains Ellen Bennett. On May 22, the Idaho State Police Office held a brief press conference at Boise headquarters. Before local media, the spokesperson read the statement, after 45 years since Richard and Ellen Bennett disappeared in Orofino, DNA analysis by Boise Forensic Institute has confirmed the 2 skeletons found under the old house basement are theirs. The case is now reclassified as homicide, file under reopened investigation. The concise announcement shocked the state. Most older Orofino residents remembered the 1973 disappearance, once seen as inexplicable. Discovering bodies and confirming identities made them believe the case finally neared answers. While public attention grew, Miller's team worked quietly. She re-reviewed all old documents, cross-referencing DNA results with anthropological data for no errors. Skull metrics, height, and tooth wear of both victims matched 1960s Orofino hospital records. The 32-page synthesis report to the Idaho prosecutor's office stated, based on DNA examination and relative confirmation, victim identities are Richard and Ellen Bennett. Both died from close-range gunshot wounds. Case reclassified as homicide cold case, active investigation. Besides identity confirmation, DNA specialists compared biological samples from the barrel and surrounding wood. Though mostly degraded, they isolated trace male DNA, not matching victims. This sequence was stored in National CODIS database for future matching. Miller saw this as key, but held off announcement. Instead, she focused on finalizing technical files, updating all data to state investigation system. In internal notes, she wrote, DNA evidence completely shifts the case. Voluntary disappearance hypothesis eliminated, Bennett now investigated as intentional homicide. On May 25, when the report was approved, File 73MP027R changed status, active, homicide cold case. Red text appeared on Boise Central screens as a milestone. With victim identities determined, the Bennett case entered a new phase, no longer a family vanishing story, but an official probe into a crime buried under the basement floor for over 4 decades. Miller's final synthesis to the state prosecutor had a concise, firm conclusion: victim identities confirmed. Cause of death: close-range gunshot. Case: homicide, under investigation. With her signature at page end, Bennett officially regained legal status, closing the long undetermined period and opening an entirely new investigative journey for the Idaho State Police. After the Bennett case was officially reclassified as homicide cold case, active investigation, Detective Sarah Miller shifted focus to identifying individuals potentially directly involved in the shooting. DNA examination results from basement evidence and the Winchester barrel became the starting point. During processing, Boise Forensic Lab discovered on the metal surface, besides lead and powder residue, trace biological material, partially oxidized epithelial cells, but sufficient for gene sequencing. Using touched DNA with noise reduction, they recovered a short nuclear sequence, then cross-referenced with National Genealogy DNA database. On June 6, 2018, match results were sent to Miller. The sequence aligned with Aaron Bennett's DNA profile, the victim's younger son. The sample was in the system from Aaron's 2015 civil medical test in California, stored in Open Genealogy database. Match certainty, 99.97%, exceeding legal threshold. Forensic report stated, DNA sample on metal surface male, gene sequence fully matches Bennett surname individual, direct blood relation to victim Richard Bennett. Miller read the results in silence. After nearly half a century, the first evidence linking a living person emerged. She requested independent cross-verification at Idaho State Crime Lab. Results confirmed the match. In the report to the state prosecutor's office, Miller wrote, DNA recovered from the barrel at the scene matches Aaron Bennett's genetic profile, the victim's younger son. Results confirm the biological sample belongs to someone with direct contact with the murder weapon. However, to ensure comprehensiveness, she continued expanding tests on other evidence. The floorwood samples containing nitrate were rescanned for additional biological traces. The forensic lab discovered a second male DNA sequence, not fully matching Aaron but closely related genetically. Based on 50% similarity, they concluded this individual was likely the older brother, Lyle Bennett. This result prompted Miller to immediately review civil data and old files. According to the latest information, Aaron, 63, was living in Sacramento, California. Lyle, 66, resided in Fresno. Both had clean records, no priors, working in small business. But in the 1973 investigation file, Lyle was mentioned in initial interviews, the one claiming parents went out to meet friends the night of disappearance. Now, the DNA sequence placed both in direct relation to the weapon. To reinforce, Miller queried commercial archives in Boise and Lewiston for 1973 firearm transactions. Per regulations then, stores kept manual logs, but some large chains were later digitized. On June 10, she received a response from Idaho Sporting Goods in Lewiston, retaining old purchase logs. In the entry dated August 12, 1973, handwritten L. Bennett, 12 GA Winchester ammunition. Signature faded, but legible surname and first initial. Storage staff confirmed the log was written by former owner Paul Henders, now deceased. Transaction paid in cash, no weapon serial. This evidence perfectly matched the ammunition and gun identified in examination. Boise ballistics report stated, scene Winchester Model 1200 barrel uses 12-gauge shot. Idaho Sporting Goods recorded sale of this ammunition type to Bennett's surname individual in August 1973, near victim's disappearance date. In her investigation log, Miller wrote briefly, timeline match, evidence match, name match, ammunition origin established. Simultaneously, she requested review of remaining Orofino administrative records. Deputy Langdon, who participated in 1973 investigation, had passed, but the office retained his handwritten note. It included a comment on the unusually calm demeanor of the Bennett brothers during interrogation. Combined with new evidence, that observation grew significant. All data compiled into a 45-page investigation report in 3 parts: DNA examination, physical evidence, and behavioral history. On June 14, 2018, Miller presented the synthesis to Idaho State Prosecutor Richard Hale. The report stated, DNA on barrel matches Aaron Bennett, victim's younger son. Secondary DNA on floor wood partial match with Lyle Bennett, eldest son. Commercial evidence confirms Lyle purchased Winchester-type ammunition, matching crime gun days before victim's disappearance. Ballistic and chemical analysis proves gun fired in basement where bodies found. In the assessment section, Miller wrote, reasonable grounds to believe the 2 individuals named were directly involved in the deaths of Richard and Ellen Bennett. Physical, DNA, and purchase data evidence consistent with hypothesis they used Winchester Model 1200 to shoot parents at home. The report concluded with a proposal, recommend Idaho State Prosecutor's Office and Federal Bureau of Investigation approve arrest warrants for suspects Aaron and Lyle Bennett on charges of second-degree murder and complicity in concealing bodies. On June 16, Prosecutor Hale signed approval for arrest warrants, noting based on DNA, physical, and verified transaction evidence, sufficient grounds for arrest. Warrants sent to FBI as both suspects resided out of state. Internal teletype, marked Case 73 MP027R stage. Arrest phase. As Miller signed the final file that day, she paused, looking at the cover text, Bennett Case Orofino, Idaho, reopened, 2018. After nearly half a century, evidence forgotten in dusty storage now formed a complete logical chain, leading to 2 names present at the scene that 1973 summer night, the victim's own sons. The next step, executing the arrests, would officially open a new chapter in what seemed a long-closed investigation. On the morning of June 20, 2018, after Idaho State Prosecutor and FBI approved arrest warrants for the Bennett brothers, the federal task force in California officially received execution orders. Interstate cooperation documents specified, Idaho police oversee investigation, FBI handle operations, and suspect transport. Under Sacramento Regional Special Agent in charge, the plan deployed simultaneously in 2 cities, Fresno and Sacramento, where Lyle and Aaron Bennett lived. Both had left Idaho in the mid-1980s and never returned. Lyle, 66, ran a small electronics repair shop in Fresno. Aaron, 63, worked as a mechanic in a Sacramento garage. Both led quiet lives, no criminal records, no civil violations. Over 4 decades, neither investigated nor noted for suspicious behavior by local police. On June 22, at 6:45 a.m., Fresno skies still misty. 3 unmarked FBI vehicles stopped in front of Lyle's shop in a small commercial area. Arrest warrant read as he raised the roll-up door. Agents ordered him out to identify and not resist. Per record, Lyle appeared confused but cooperative, asking only, "This about Idaho, right?" Handcuffed, he offered no resistance, eyes calm. Simultaneously in Sacramento, the second team entered Aaron's solo apartment. He was arrested on-site preparing for morning shift. Neighbor witnesses said he didn't resist, only bowed his head silently as Miranda rights read. Brothers separated, transported to local FBI headquarters for temporary custody processing. That day, major state papers ran short articles. 2 men arrested in California, tied to 1973 Idaho parent murder case. News shocked small Orofino community, where many remembered the Bennett disappearance. Reporters sought Idaho police confirmation. Spokesperson only verified arrests executed per state court order, declining details. That afternoon, case agent Jason O'Connor contacted Detective Sarah Miller via secure line. Both suspects safely in custody. No resistance, awaiting extradition. Miller noted in work log, 45 years later, final 2 names in Bennett file return as suspects. That day, Idaho State Prosecutor's Office sent formal extradition request to California Federal District Court. On June 25, Central California Federal Court held brief hearing to confirm arrest grounds. Both suspects had private attorneys. Per records, Lyle stated no involvement in criminal acts, while Aaron remained silent. After reviewing indictment and DNA results, judge signed extradition order. On June 28, a 4-person federal escort team flew Lyle and Ellen Bennett on Idaho police aircraft from Los Angeles to Boise. As the plane landed at Goen Field that afternoon, local reporters were already present. The 2 suspects exited in civilian clothes, hands cuffed in front, each between 2 officers. They descended the stairs wordlessly. Evening news on KTVB Boise opened with cold case reopened, arrests made in 45-year-old Bennett homicide. Images of the silver-haired men aired alongside a 1972 black and white photo of their parents. In Boise, initial interrogations conducted in Idaho State Police investigation rooms, Sarah Miller, present with prosecutor Richard Hale. Suspects separated, 1 per room. In records, Miller noted stark demeanor differences, Lyle calm, speaking slowly. Aaron silent, answering briefly, yes or no. Both informed of right to counsel and signed Miranda rights acknowledgement, no objections. In criminal procedure, prosecutor read temporary charges aloud: second-degree murder, 2 counts, complicity in concealing bodies and obstruction of justice. Lyle listened with cold eyes. Aaron bowed his head. Both transferred to Ada County Detention, awaiting first hearing in 2 days. On June 30th, in Idaho State Police press room, Miller appeared before media for the first time. She stated briefly, "Today we confirm arrests of 2 individuals linked to the 1973 Orofino deaths of Richard and Ellen Bennett. The 45-year investigation has reached a significant breakthrough." Asked about evidence, she said only, "We rely on DNA examination results and physical evidence from the scene. Legal process will continue." Internally, her team worked overnight, preparing prosecution files. Key evidence included barrel DNA results, 1973 ammunition purchase data, and ballistics report proving basement firing. Also included old interrogation transcripts, inconsistent brother statements, and Sheriff Haller's notes, all reorganized into complete file, chronologically numbered. On July 2, 2018, Prosecutor Hale officially signed criminal indictment against Aaron and Lyle Bennett. The 18-page document stated, based on DNA, physical and commercial data evidence, sufficient grounds to indict both defendants for murder and body concealment. That day, Idaho State Court approved no bail detention. Lyle and Ellen Bennett transferred from Ada County Jail to Idaho State Detention Center, awaiting formal interrogation and trial. As the extradition file closed, Sarah Miller left the office late, looking through the window at distant mountains fading in sunset. 45 years since the Bennett names vanished from the small Clearwater River town, they now reappeared on a murder suspect list. The investigation reached a point Idaho's justice system once thought impossible. 2 sons arrested for allegedly killing their own parents. The Bennett case, forgotten for so long, had officially returned to the light of justice. 2 days after being extradited to Boise, on the morning of July 4, 2018, Prosecutor Richard Hale signed the order, allowing the investigation team to conduct formal interrogations of the 2 suspects in the Bennett case. The interrogation room was prepared at the Idaho State Police headquarters, where Detective Sarah Miller directly presided. Defense attorneys were present to ensure legal compliance. Lyle and Aaron were separated, starting with the younger, Ellen Bennett. During the first 48 hours in custody, Aaron said almost nothing. He ate little, remained silent, eyes deeply sunken. When Miller entered the room, only a water bottle, recording pen, and Miranda rights form were on the table. She began calmly, reminding him of his right to remain silent, right to an attorney, and that anything said would be recorded as evidence. Aaron nodded confirmation, signed. The interrogation began with questions about distant memories. Did he remember the night of August 18, 1973, when living in Orofino? Aaron spoke softly, voice hoarse from tension. I remember everything. As Miller continued, he sat straight, hands clasped, eyes on the table. I shot him, he said slowly. The room fell silent. After several seconds, Miller asked for confirmation. Aaron nodded. He recounted that night, a fierce argument erupted between him and his father, Richard Bennett. He was furious, said he'd throw me out, that I was a disappointment. Pressed for reasons, Aaron said his father had repeatedly physically abused and threatened him when he resisted. I believed that night he would kill me. I was terrified. According to his account, the Winchester shotgun in the house was kept by his father in the basement cabinet for burglar protection. During the argument, Richard went downstairs, and Aaron thought he was getting the gun. The then 18-year-old ran after, wrestled the gun in panic. I don't remember the exact trigger moment. It all happened in a second, he said. The bullet hit Richard's chest at close range, collapsing him instantly. Ellen, hearing the shot, rushed down the stairs. Mom screamed and ran over. I turned, gun still in hand, and it fired again. I didn't have time to think. When the smoke cleared, Mom was down. Aaron paused, hands overhead, voice choking. I didn't mean to kill her. It was all fear. He then said Lyle, hearing the blasts from upstairs, ran down and froze at the scene. The brothers panicked, too afraid to call police. Lyle said no one would believe us. He was respected. We were just bad kids. They dragged the bodies to the room center, sat silently for hours unsure what to do. By midnight, Lyle got planks, hammer, and glue, told his brother to dig a pit under the floor. They worked all night, buried parents in the basement, covered with soil, refloored with new wood, cleaned all traces. My brother said next morning, we'd say parents went out and didn't return, Aaron whispered. And we did. Throughout the confession, Miller interrupted only for timelines and physical details. She asked about the gun. After burial, where was the Winchester? Aaron said they disassembled it. Lyle took the barrel to discard in northern Forest Edge. I remember him saying make it disappear. Prior examination showed the basement barrel fragment was Winchester Model 1200, fully matching the confession. Asked why no surrender, he replied. We lived with that secret our whole lives. My brother believed silence would make it forgotten. At the same time, in the adjacent room, Lyle Bennett was interrogated. Unlike his brother, he remained calm and cautious. When Miller asked if he knew about his parents' deaths, he was silent long, then said, I know it happened, and I couldn't stop it. Lyle denied pulling the trigger, but admitted being at the scene after shots. When I came down, it was over. Aaron was panicking. I knew there was no going back. He said he proposed burying the bodies and staging disappearance. I feared he'd be executed. I couldn't lose anyone else. Interrogation records were audio taped, signed by both suspects and attorneys. After nearly 10-hour sessions, the team compiled a summary report. Miller cross-referenced confessions with forensic evidence, shot direction matched simulated trajectory, burial site matched description, broken barrel fit, discard detail. All data aligned with confessions. In internal notes, she wrote, Aaron and Lyle Bennett statements consistent with scientific results, confirming event sequence in basement on August 18, 1973. Motive, determined as fear and consequence concealment. As interrogation ended, Aaron asked for a final word. He looked at Miller and whispered, we lived our whole lives in that house's shadow. Maybe now it ends. The statement was recorded, closing a long day, the day after 45 years. Bennett's silence was finally broken by confessions from those raised in the crime house. The Bennett case trial began on the morning of October 12, 2018, at Ada County Court, Boise, Idaho. After nearly 4 months of investigation, prosecution, and file preparation, this was the first public legal unveiling of the 45-year buried truth. The courtroom was fuller than usual. Local press, national media representatives, and elderly Orofino residents, who knew the 1973 disappearance, were present. Defendants, Lyle and Ellen Bennett, entered escorted by two officers, in simple shirts, silver hair, weathered faces. They sat beside private defense attorneys, facing Idaho State Prosecutor Richard Hale, with lead investigator Sarah Miller in the witness row. The trial was presided by Judge Edward K. Mallory. He opened by reading the formal indictment. Ellen Bennett charged with second-degree manslaughter under Idaho Criminal Code, aggravated by deadly weapon use. Lyle Bennett charged with 2 counts of body concealment and obstruction of justice. After identity and rights confirmation, both defendants pleaded guilty per signed interrogation confessions, but attorneys requested court consider special circumstances related to family situation. Prosecutor Hale presented first. Standing before the 12-person jury, he opened files and spoke slowly. This is not just a reopened criminal case. It is proof time cannot hide truth. He outlined the full event chain, from 1973 disappearance report, initial investigation, file freezing, to 2018 remains discovery. Evidence presented sequentially, DNA results, ballistic analysis map, basement photos, and Winchester barrel sample with bodies. Hale called investigator Miller to the stand for forensic results. She calmly described examination process: nitrate and lead in floor wood, confirming close-range gunfire, barrel fragment matching 12-gauge, shot direction fitting body positions. The court then viewed a short video of Ellen Bennett's July confession. Audio echoed, "I shot him. I just feared he'd kill me." Many in the gallery bowed heads. Prosecution continued with Lyle's confession excerpts, admitting helping bury and stage. Hale emphasized, this was not immediate self-defense, but deliberate decision to erase crime traces. He presented evidence chain. Lyle purchased Winchester ammo days before murder. Burial site, exactly matched shot location. Both staged disappearance script. They lived over 40 years without truth. That is no longer fear, it is choice. Hale concluded firmly. Ellen's defense attorney, Janet Foley, countered. She acknowledged undeniable physical evidence, but stressed defendant's psychological state at crime time. Ellen Bennett was then an 18-year-old youth in a strictly controlled chronic mental abuse environment. That night, he reacted in panic, without intent to kill. She cited independent expert psychological report, concluding Ellen showed chronic fear syndrome from family abuse, affecting behavior. Without direct threat from the father, no shot would have fired, Foley said, eyeing the jury. Lyle's defense, by attorney Robert Hensley, argued client's actions were reflex to protect brother from a legal system he believed would never listen. He presented Lyle's academic and work records over years, no priors, honest living, no profit motive. Lyle killed no one. He erred in choosing concealment over facing. That is a crime of fear, not malice. Prosecution objected, noting burial and staging could not be viewed as immediate panic. Judge Mallory requested final presentations before closing arguments. In closing, Hale said, "Time does not erase violence consequences, but justice cannot forget." Though 45 years passed, those night actions took 2 lives and left undeniable traces. He turned to jury. Your duty is to determine responsibility, not of youth then, but of adults who chose silence before guilt. The trial lasted 6 days. Witnesses included forensic experts, investigators, and Ellen Bennett's remaining relative. Both defendants remained cooperative, denying no charges. Given final words, Ellen choked, "I don't seek forgiveness. I just want parents at peace, and us no longer living in lies." Lyle said briefly, "I chose wrong to protect my brother. I take responsibility." On October 18th, after nearly 8 hours deliberation, jury returned. Atmosphere dead silent. Foreman asked to read verdict. Voice clear. On second-degree manslaughter charge against defendant Ellen Bennett, guilty. On body concealment and obstruction of justice charges against defendant Lyle Bennett, guilty. In court, no one spoke. Ellen bowed head, hands trembling slightly. Lyle looked at brother, nodded faintly, accepting fate. Judge Mallory read sentencing. He spoke slowly, each word. Court recognizes defendant's actions occurred in special circumstances, with fear and psychological crisis factors, but consequences were 2 lives lost and truth concealed nearly half a century. Therefore, court sentences defendant Aaron Bennett to 20 years imprisonment for second-degree manslaughter, defendant Lyle Bennett to 10 years imprisonment for body concealment and obstruction of justice, both credited for time served and transferred to Idaho Correctional Center for sentence execution. As the gavel struck 3 times, the Bennett case legally closed. Murmurs rose in court, mixed with silent gazes from those awaiting answers for decades. Sarah Miller in back row said nothing, only jotting in notebook, verdict, fair and weighty for memory. Outside, Boise afternoon stretched in pale sunlight, casting a thin glow over a story thought long ended. The 1973 disappearance, now symbol of investigation persistence and evidence power over time. After the Boise trial closed and sentences pronounced, the investigation team's final task was completing the Bennett case summary report, one of Idaho State Police history's longest, most complex files. Detective Sarah Miller was assigned. She spent the last 3 weeks of 2018 reviewing all records, from 1973 minutes to latest DNA conclusions. The report, over 200 pages, simply titled, The Bennett Case, Final Review and Post-Investigation Summary. In the introduction, Miller wrote, "The Bennett case exemplifies investigation limits in pre-modern forensic era, while highlighting evidence storage importance, even in minimal conditions." She identified 3 reasons for the nearly half-century delay. First, initial phase procedural errors, scene superficially processed, basement not excavated, evidence improperly sealed. Second, lack of analysis technology then prevented identifying clues like nitrate traces, wood samples, or metal fragment nature. Third, local agency subjective mindset, early concluding voluntary disappearance without supporting evidence. Miller wrote, "If 1973 procedures were rigorous, the case might have resolved in months, not 45 years. The report's middle detailed modern breakthrough steps, mitochondrial DNA application, surface trace scanning, genealogy data mining, tools non-existent last century." Miller stressed one remaining epithelial cell on the barrel, accidentally preserved in damp subfloor soil, unlocked the case. This is the clearest example of storage value. Torn plastic bags and damp paper boxes in Lewiston warehouse, seemingly useless, held the full truth. She dedicated a section to DNA database systems and federal cooperation roles. Thanks to CODIS and GDD match networks, forgotten genetic samples matched relatives in other states, leading to exact Richard and Ellen Bennett identification. In this chapter's conclusion, she noted, "No technology replaces investigation intuition, but modern tech makes justice unbound by time." After report completion, on December 10, 2018, Idaho State Police held a press conference for official release. Director Mark Doolin stood before dozens of reporters, declaring, "The Bennett case, the 1973 disappearance, has been successfully resolved through team efforts and modern DNA technology. This is Idaho's longest cold case, closed with clear conclusion." Behind him on screen, Case 73MP027R, closed. At the press conference, Doolin extended thanks to the Boise laboratories, forensic specialists, and especially Detective Sarah Miller. Media outlets unanimously published news with similar headlines. "Idaho solves its oldest cold case after 45 years. KTVB television news described the Bennett case as a symbol of justice's persistence against the limits of time. Many national papers, like the Washington Post and Los Angeles Times, also covered it, emphasizing the role of DNA technology and evidence storage in solving the case. In Orofino, the town where it all began, the atmosphere was quieter. The log house on Clearwater Drive, where the 2 skeletons were discovered, was declared unsafe by authorities after excavation. The town council decided to demolish the structure to prevent it from becoming a curiosity for thrill seekers. In March 2019, bulldozers carried out the full demolition. In one morning, the old wood that once concealed the crime was leveled, returning the plot to empty land overlooking the river. The site was later planned as a small park, with a bronze memorial plaque engraved, "In memory of Richard and Ellen Bennett, lost 1973, found 2018. In the final appendix of the report, Miller wrote, "The Bennett file closes, but it reminds every generation of investigators that every small error can bury the truth for decades. No case is truly cold if evidence remains and determination is maintained." She proposed the Idaho State Police establish a periodic review program for old cold cases, along with standardized evidence preservation procedures statewide. This proposal was approved the following year, named the Bennett Protocol, a standardized system for evidence storage and periodic DNA retesting, applied to all unsolved cases. On December 28, 2018, as the file was sealed and archived in the Boise Central Warehouse, Sarah Miller wrote the final line in her investigation log. Case 73 MP027R, completed. Justice delivered, 45 years late, but not forgotten. She turned off the office light, closed the door, leaving on the desk the thick file folder, its cover faintly bearing the faded text, "Bennett Family, Orofino, 1973. Outside, the first snow of the season began falling over Boise. In the quiet of Idaho winter, the state's longest-running case was closed, not as a mystery anymore, but as proof that sometimes justice arrives late, but never vanishes. The story of the Bennett case, two sons killing their parents and hiding the bodies for 45 years, is not just a family tragedy, but a mirror reflecting many issues still present in American society today. Silence in domestic abuse, the limits of justice in the past, and the redemptive power of truth. In 1973 Idaho, when Aaron and Lyle lived in fear, they had nowhere to seek help. No one talked about family violence, let alone believed a father could threaten his children. The price of silence was 2 lives lost, and half a century lived in guilt. Today, the United States is different. Victim support programs, hotlines, and psychological protection policies are everywhere. But the Bennett lesson remains valid, that fear and silence can kill conscience faster than violence. Additionally, the story is proof of scientific and judicial progress, forgotten evidence, a gun barrel fragment, and a few wood fibers, thanks to modern DNA technology, brought the truth back to light. In a nation that values legality and accountability, the Bennett case reminds that every small procedural error, like improper evidence sealing or hasty judgment, can delay justice for decades. The greatest lesson for Americans today is never underestimate the power of speaking out, of transparency, and of believing in justice, even if it arrives late. As Detective Sarah Miller wrote in her final report, "Justice may be slow, but if we maintain faith and protect the truth, it will never lose track." Thank you for following to the end of the Bennett case story, proof that truth can be buried, but justice is never lost. Please subscribe to the channel to continue exploring with us cases thought forgotten, but still echoing in America's memory.